Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we join together to honor a loving husband, father, brother, Mason, golfer, Philly sports fan, and so much more. Bernie Berkowitz, Berolabel Ben Moshe Umiriam, was a man committed to his family, his friends, his co-workers who became friends, and especially his beloved wife, Barbara, of blessed memory, who passed away just a few years ago. I did not know Bernie in life, but I had the opportunity to spend some time with some of those in his immediate family network who shared with me a bit about the man that he was, and the trajectory of his life, what brought him joy, why they loved him so much, and how they still feel the weight of this largely sudden loss. So some things I learned about Bernie. I learned that he was a big kibitzer, a talker who could make friends wherever he went. He was affable, always with a joke or with something to lighten the energy, which drew people to him, perhaps some of you. I learned about his time at PSE&G, how he spent nearly 40 years working for them, climbing the ladder to become an engineering supervisor. How after retirement, he was the one who made it his call to organize the PSE&G retirement group, keeping ties with friends and colleagues well into his retirement. I learned about how, shaped by fond memories of his parents' camper and family travel with his parents and siblings, that he traveled the world with Barbara, cruises, golfing in Myrtle Beach, and more. I learned that he was a proud Mason, and we all just witnessed the Masonic tribute. And his time at the lodge meant a lot to him. So gratitude to the Masons, the overwhelming number of them, especially for being here and providing those Masonic honors. This is, I can imagine, not where anyone wishes to be today. And this is not where, I imagine, anyone expected to be today. But we're here today in support of this family as they process their grief and as they uphold Bernie's dignity today. Together, you all gather today in his memory to offer words and prayers and final dedications as we begin to frame together what will become his lasting legacy. I invite us now to take a moment in quiet thought and contemplation, to let a positive memory of Bernie take center stage in your mind. It may be something that, in acknowledging the loss, brings a tear to your eye, or something that was funny, that brings a smile to your face. Whatever it is, I invite you to allow something joyous and positive in memory and experience with him to come front and center and be a lasting tribute to him in your mind. We'll take a few moments of quiet. As we come back together, note that Bernie's predeceased by his wife Barbara of blessed memory, and his parents Max and Mary, and his siblings Peter and Edwin, all of blessed memory. He is survived by his son Blaine and his daughter Sharon, and his siblings Gig and his wife Dee, Irene, and David. He's also survived by many loving nieces and nephews. And it's my prayer, first, that I got all the names correct, and second, that your loving care and support for one another carries you through this difficult transition. Our Jewish tradition teaches that while the physical body is temporary, the soul is eternal. So today we gather for sacred purpose to pray for full and complete rest for Bernie's body. We believe that his soul, though, remains bound in the bond of life, and that's to each of you. And we seek blessings for the continued elevation of his soul. My name is Rabbi Nathan Weiner. I'm a rabbi here in South Jersey at Congregation Beth Tikva in Marlton. It's an honor on behalf of myself and my family and my congregation to be present with each of you today. Going to recite Psalm 23. It's customary to recite Tehillim, Psalms, in moments such as this, and more specifically, Psalm 23, a psalm universal across the Abrahamic faith traditions at moments of loss and grief. I'll read it first in the Hebrew, followed by a standard translation into the English. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binotesha yarbitzeni al mei menuchoti nahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech bagetz al mavet lo irara ki atai imadi. Shivtecha al mishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged zorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi ravaya. Ach tov v'chesed yerdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen v'amen. From Kohelet Ecclesiastes, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which has been planted. A time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather them up, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time for speaking. This is certainly a time for speaking and to offer words on behalf of the family as a hesped, a eulogy to uphold Bernie's kavod, his honor. I invite his brother Gig.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thanks everyone for attending. It's a tribute to Bernie's life. A life well lived for 87 years. Obviously, I knew Bernie for a long time. We shared our younger years with our brothers Pete and Ed. They've all passed, and I'd like to share a few things if we can. We all grew up living behind Berkshire Service Station in Riverside Park. Our dad, Max, ran the garage, and we all had our turn at taking care of the customers during dinner, weekends. We were open, it seems like forever. And we did what we had, but we worked around robin on it. Our mom, Mary, was the brains of the operation. She ruled with an iron fist, which may account for some of her, I don't know, questionable cooking skills. Speaking of the garage/home, one of the things that Bernie did early in his youth, we were all out back playing, and it was interesting because we lived right there, but we had a large tree with a rope swing. Bernie says, push me higher, push me higher. And that was really good thought until he went through the back window of the garage. 14 stitches later, he said, no more rope swing, and my mother said, you're right, and she went out and cut it down. He was a traveling man, as the Masons will attest. That's what we call one another. And his numerous travels with cruises and his mini camper, which he lent to me to take a trip to Florida, and he'd go to visit anybody, anytime. Bernie was just that kind of person. Bernie married his first wife, Bea, and they both got to a great surprise at their wedding. They got to ride in the old Model T fire truck from the village, or the Delran Fire Company, to the reception. I think it was more a surprise to Bernie than it was to Bea. They had 2 children, Blaine and Sharon, and they're right here. And Bernie eventually found his place in life. He went to PSE&G, worked a couple other jobs along the way, but PSE&G seemed to be where he was finally grounded. If memory serves me right, he started in the line group and eventually moved into underground. And if I recall, he retired as a senior plant engineer 20 plus years ago, so he had a nice retirement. Bernie loved sports, and since I lived in Richmond, Virginia, every year PSE&G, from guys from stations from Newark, Trenton, Burlington, they'd get together and go to Myrtle Beach. And somewhere along the way, they needed me for a foursome, so what the guys in New Jersey decided, we'll drive down to Gig's house, spend the night there, and let his wife cook dinner, and then we can head on to Myrtle the next day. It was a great time, a lot of fun, a lot of food, a lot of stories, and I felt honored to be invited. That lasted for 13, 14 years. Backing up a bit, Bernie was the first of the 4 boys to build a house. We called our house building business at Berkshire Construction, named after the garage. Bernie's house was the second in the line of 12. Our home, when we moved from behind the garage, was the first. And it was the second. And over the years, we constructed 12 houses here, there, and everywhere. Max, Ed Ivanicki, and some of you guys at Public Service may remember his son that worked at Public Service. And the 4 boys, we all learned life lessons and and some skills that we'll never forget. Bernie loved the Eagles. He was a big Phillies fan, but I think the Eagles were a little bit higher in his mind. David, several years ago, 7 years ago, and Judy were his wife, his departed wife, and they were going to take Bernie to a game on his 80th birthday. Well, that was really super, except David had to go somewhere. He was, his job required he travel. And they were out of the country, so he calls me and he says, go up and take Bernie to the football game. The tickets are in will call. So we pick him up, we go to the game, and on the scoreboard at halftime, happy birthday, Bernie. Judy. Bernie liked sports so much, one day he's tossing a football around the parking lot over at PSE&G and tears his Achilles tendon. So he tried to write that off as a work-related injury. That didn't work. The second accident, though, that he did have at work was truly a work-related injury. I can't recall if it was Bardier in the car with him, but when he got hit head-on over in Collingswood, and he said, well, it was a little car, so I guess, it was supposed to break like it did. But I think the second accident is what left him with lifelong back issues, but he never complained. Bernie's life, ended with his first wife, but it never ended with Blaine and Sharon. It seems that from what I know and I've experienced, they didn't agree on a whole lot of things over the years, but they never stopped talking. Please keep talking. His married life to Barbara was some sort of a change in Bernie. He was different a little bit. He was a little bit more mellow. And one of the things that happened while he was a little more mellow was Barbara was really soft in her voice, and Bernie was still a little brusque, but he was a little more yellow. They were, his marriage to Barbara had a quieting effect, so to speak. While he was never vocal about his children, he was very proud of Sharon and Blaine. Both contribute nicely to society. Most of you know Sharon worked at public service for, I don't know if it was more years than your dad, Sharon, but more hours for sure. You were there tons of weekends, I know that. Several times when Dee and I would come up for some reason, where's Sharon? She's working. So bless your heart for that. Blaine, on the other hand, was in the IT world, and unfortunately his business made him relocate, and so he's currently living in Greensboro, North Carolina. That's the most recent station he's been in. Sharon stayed local. As you know, she worked, I believe, Newark for a while, maybe Trenton, but Camden. And bottom line, it allowed her, in her spare time, which was very infrequent, she was able to take care of family members. Looked after Bernie, her mom, and others that needed help. In fact, Sharon just recently, friends needed help babysitting, Sharon was there. I'm not going to say what you were doing, watching little kids, Sharon and Blaine are cut from the same cloth, except different patterns. Lastly, I just want to say he had a big heart. He took on tasks sometimes with the energy he couldn't spare. He ran and did what needed to be done. Those who knew him had a constant theme in their condolences. Some of the ones today said the exact same things of the dozen or so emails I got from friends that we notified. He was a great guy with a great sense of humor, and he'll be greatly missed. I can't improve on that. Love you, Gig. Thank you. Thank you.
It's with these loving thoughts and words of respect and dedication that we move to the central prayer of a Jewish memorial service, El Malei Rachamim, which asks that his soul be granted true rest on the wings of God's divine presence. I'll read it first in the English, followed by chanting it in the Hebrew. Please rise. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the divine presence in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as resplendence of the firmament to the soul of Bernard Berkowitz, who has gone to his eternal home. For charity has been donated in remembrance of his soul, may his place of rest be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the All-Merciful One shelter him with the cover of God's wings forever, and bind his soul in the bond of life. Adonai is his heritage. May he rest in his resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Al Kanfei Hashchina, B'ma'alot kedoshim u'tehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Beryl Leibel ben Moshe u'Miriam, shehalach le'olamo, ba'avor shenadvu tzadaka be'ad hazkarat nishmato, began eden tehe menuchato, Lachen bal harachamim yasti rehu beseter kenafav leolamim. Bitzror hachayim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. V'yanuach al mishkavo b'shalom. V'nomar Amen. Please remain standing. El Malei Rachamim concludes the mitzvot that we are doing on Bernie's behalf, the mitzvah of kavod hamet, of honoring the deceased. And we transition, those of us who are not the immediate mourners, we transition into a community of consolation for the mourners, performing the mitzvah of nichum avelim, of comforting them as they enter into this new status officially as a mourner. And the first act that one does as a mourner to mark this transition is recite a prayer called the Mourner's Kaddish. The Mourner's Kaddish in your books is on pages, I think, 14 and 15. And the Mourner's Kaddish is in Aramaic, and it doesn't speak about death at all. It only speaks words of praise. And it concludes with a prayer for peace. And the idea of saying these words of praise at this moment is that when you recite words of praise, it's a mitzvah. And when you do mitzvahs, you get good credit. You get a plus in your column. Except, had Bernie not died, this mitzvah wouldn't be being done. Therefore, he's the impetus for it. He gets the credit. So this is two things. Number one, it's a spiritual elevation for him, done through the period of mourning. And second, it allows those in their most acute grief who know the goodness that he brought into the world to, through a Jewish lens, continue to have his goodness, his mitzvot, be brought into the world in a real, intangible way through this act. And God willing, to know that that goodness continues to fill and permeate the world anew through you is a comfort as you move through your mourning and your grief. So it's with that intention that we say for the first time in his memory the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra kirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivarach leolam ulamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit adar, v'yit alev, v'yit halal, shemei dekudesha berichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who ordains peace in the heavens inspire us to be God's partners and agents for peace on earth, for us, for all the people of Israel and all inhabitants of the earth. And we say, Amen. Please be seated. Our formal time together here is drawing to a close. The family asks that donations in lieu of flowers please be made to the American Diabetes Association or to a charity of your choice. I conclude my piece by saying the traditional words of consolation. We say, Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Betoch Shar Avelei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May the Holy One of Blessing have comfort for you, together among all the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And may Bernard Berkowitz, Beryl Leibel, Ben Moshe, Miriam, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory continue to be an everlasting blessing. Thank you. Privilege.
Rise once more, please.
Those who run the